I'm very excited and very, very honored to welcome you here tonight for the first of 3 dinners celebrating our 25-year anniversary.
Like, it's a great opportunity for anybody in the community to come out and just have a place where you can not only connect with other people, but you can get your hands dirty. And so a lot of what we do is hand cultivated, and we're 3.5 acres. It's all organic.
Harvest whatever is ready to harvest and just pay as you go. So you're both getting the most fresh produce you can. You're supporting Homeless Garden Project. You're getting to connect, just so directly with the food that we're growing here and that you're going to be eating.
Land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
Really hard to put into words. Very fortunate to have Deborah Madison here with us tonight. Deborah's the founder of Green's Restaurant. Green's Restaurant really was one of the first restaurants and a very important part of the movement that really changed the whole way we think about food and brought food and farming and health, both of our own health, human health, and health of the earth, all together in the same circle. Deborah is both an extraordinary person and a very down-to-earth person.
Happy birthday to this wonderful organization. 25 years is a long time. And I have to say the cold is kind of refreshing, isn't it? After the heat, there's no mosquitoes. It's great. I like it. But since finishing my last 2 cookbooks, Vegetable Literacy and the new Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone, I'm done writing cookbooks. As far as I know, at least I think I am. And so with all the free time I've had this past year, I've been doing things like riding my bike and cooking, and mainly working in my garden and reading. And sometimes I read books about how to grow vegetables, flowers, and herbs while I'm trying to do that, but not always. And I just read a wonderful book, a really strange, complex book called The Telling Room that I think relates to what's happening here. This is a literary nonfiction work written by a man who finds himself in a climatically hostile part of Spain talking to a cheesemaker. The people there describe their climate as 9 months of winter and 3 months of hell. And I was just in Minneapolis, where they say they have 2 seasons, winter and road repair, which is also a little bit like where I live in New Mexico. The population of the town of Guzman is 80 people. They have a bar, and that's the only business. But everybody has a little bit of land, and on their land they grow wheat, and they grow grapes, and in the summer they grow vegetables. They make their own wine from their grapes, they make their own bread from their wheat, and the protagonist, of course, makes cheese from churro sheep. In any case, there's a lot of sharing of food and drink in this very, very small village. The residents have these little caves or bodegas that are built back into the hill where they go to escape the summer heat. And when they're there, they take out their wine, they slice their bread. If they have cheese, they slice their cheese, maybe a sausage, And they drink, and they eat, and they tell stories, hence the title of the book, The Telling Room. The houses that these people live in are unspeakably poor. There's not a lot of food. The lives are hard, but they're incredibly straightforward. And the author was very moved by this community and its stripped down elements, and he made many, many visits there. In the end, he found it was far from ideal. There was a lot of gossip, there was malicious talk, and all those other kind of human qualities that enter into relationships. But even so, I too was very moved by this community. The image I came away with was that the community as an organism. That these 80 quarrelsome individuals were actually woven into a larger whole. The community that had a life of its own. It had its own force. And the Latin roots for community, because I love looking up language roots and stuff, come from the word communis, meaning common, or public, or general, or shared by all. And the root of companion, meaning with bread, suggests some very wonderful archaic words like breadfellow or messmate, which have actually to do with the sharing of food. Your companions are the people you break bread with. And conversely, if you want to really change your life and mix things up, you break bread with other people, or you break different kinds of bread. Food and shelter, I think, are the two most essential needs for all people. And without either of them, or without even one of them, I think we all suffer. Not just those who are going without, although they carry the heaviest burden, but all of us. While I may have access to good food, and I do, and I have a comfortable, albeit very small and somewhat funky house, that someone else doesn't is painful, to be sure. And it's a lack for both of us. We're all in this world together. And both unrest and well-being are shared if we are a community. So even though I really should be home taking care of my garden in New Mexico, because it is actually hot and windy and dry, I'm very happy to be here. And when I heard and learned more about this project, I felt actually compelled to come and to learn more about the Homeless Garden Project, which I have a little bit in the last 24 hours or so. So it's truly amazing what can happen on 3.5 acres, a few modest enterprises, when there's a vision of a thriving and inclusive community, a workforce, and a local food system. And of course, I'm just quoting your vision statement with these words. But the reason I like them and the reason I wanted you to know about this story in the beginning, the telling room, is because they're just other ways of talking about, say, a community that's made up of farmers, that grow their own food, which is therefore local. It's a community of people. It's the same kind of thing. And what we're dealing with here is something that's just incredibly basic. It's food and sharing. These are very, very deep human concerns, as are joy and well-being. Whether it's vegetables from the garden, a meal at the table, or a meal in a restaurant, is really a wonderful source of joy for both those offering and those receiving. It's a kind of rare and seamless experience, I find. And with joy, we can do so very much. With sadness and worry, not so much. Homelessness is not usually about joy, and more often it's a terrible worry, as so many of the members of this project have testified. My teacher, Suzuki Roshi, in San Francisco, used to use the phrase rising mind. Now, I'm not sure I remember what exactly that means, but to me, it always means the ability to experience, to rise to a kind of joyfulness that makes all things seem possible. And when our spirits are not rising, when they're sinking, it's hard to see the possibilities that are there for us. It's hard even to imagine them. When we're hungry, it's even harder. I did have a period of time in my life when people say, oh, well, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I couldn't even see the tunnel. I mean, it was nothing but black. And I'm always astounded that you can go through these things and come out the other end somehow. I think a garden is one of the best places I know to experience a surge of optimism, of rising mind. So it's not really a surprise to me that the good that's taking place here is taking good around a garden. So gardens do have a power, and they change people's lives inside of the kitchen and also outside of the kitchen, and they come in many forms. They're backyard gardens, home gardens, and these are probably the most basic of American gardens, and these are gardens from which we can feed ourselves a taste, or we can feed ourselves a feast, or we can supply our food for the year, as many people had to do. There's school gardens, which are absolutely wonderful. If you have ever worked in a school garden, and a lot of you are smiling and nodding your heads, they're fantastic, because kids really do come into school thinking that food comes from the store. And you give them a seed, they grow a radish, they grow a carrot, and their lives are forever changed. And they will eat any vegetable they grow. Community gardens is another form of garden that provides space to work for those who don't have a yard. But even better, they provide an opportunity to interact and share, again, with a great many other people. I was in Switzerland recently on a train, and I saw these wonderful community gardens from the train, and each little plot had a shack that was big enough for some tools and a bottle of schnapps. And I saw the people working in their gardens, sharing drinks and tools and gardening and talking. And I thought, what a really nice way to spend an afternoon and come home with a basket of food as well. In New Mexico, where I live, we don't really have soil. We have adobe. We have adobe bricks. We have adobe houses, and it's in the ground. That's where it comes from. So if you want to make a bed of dirt that really will grow something, it takes a long time, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes a strong back, and it doesn't happen overnight. I was frustrated for many reasons with my garden, and I asked a friend who's a builder, can you come up with a plan for a good raised bed that really works? And he did. And it has hoops that are attached to it. He designed summer and winter covers that really fit well over it, and they zip up and they unzip so the air can go through. He has sold thousands of these beds, and a lot of them go to families who want their children to have the experience of growing something, but they don't want them to have to wait till they're 21. You know, they would like to do it while they're still children. And recently an entrepreneur came to him and said, how much for 1,000 beds? I'd like to buy 1,000 beds and give them away to people who need a way to grow some food. Urban gardens, very, very important, I think, and there's so many of them now. They don't have to be large. They can be small. But I think what matters is to know that not everybody can get to the farmer's market on a Saturday morning. You want an urban garden with a farm stand where people can come down on a Tuesday night and get their vegetables for dinner. And I think we're starting to see that happen. We had it in Santa Fe until about a week ago, when the city closed down an urban farm because somebody complained they didn't like the looks of the old buildings. And it had been a farm long before houses were there. And I'm sure we're going to live to regret this, and it will be too late when we finally figure out how stupid we were, but this was a great example of the kind of urban farm we need. There's rooftop gardens, there are gardens that have lots of bees, there's gardens that are designed for healing people. There's a wonderful part of the Arboretum in Golden Gate Park, which is a garden designed for people in wheelchairs and people who are blind, who can reach out and they can touch plants that are highly aromatic, and they can experience plants in that way. I just recently saw Salt of the Earth, which is a wonderful movie about Sebastian Salgado, the Brazilian photographer. But he spent a lifetime basically taking pictures of people who were in the most dire of human straits. People who are forced to migrate from their home countries because of drought and politics, people who were deeply homeless and deeply hungry. He photographed so much misery, and to the point where he finally came undone by his efforts to document so much sorrow and pain. He decided it was time to go home to Brazil. He loved Brazil. He grew up in the rainforest. He went back, and the rainforest was gone. It had been chopped out. It was desert. It's so shocking to see this. And his wife, who I'm sure was just trying to cheer him up, said, I know, let's replant it. And he said, okay. And they planted 1 million trees. And they brought this forest back. And for Sebastian Salgado, his rising mind returned when he did this garden. When I was working on my book, Local Flavors, which is a book about cooking and eating for farmers markets across America, I was doing research. I visited about 100 markets around the country. And I visited a woman in Minneapolis, and she had worked very hard on a public housing initiative. And it passed, and her public housing buildings were built, people moved in, and she realized it was a Tower of Babel. Nobody could talk to each other. And the reason they couldn't talk is because they all spoke different languages. Without conversation, she felt there was no hope in building the kind of community she wanted, she envisioned. So what she did is she decided to concentrate on the kids. And she built 6 gardens. She actually hired people who could garden and who knew what they were doing. And then she invited young teenagers to come and work in the gardens. And these kids were all mixed up, as far as race and language goes. But somehow, being kids, they learned to communicate with one another as they worked together. Now, these kids sold their produce to a nearby bakery cafe, and they brought their lettuces to the retirement home for the residents, and they had a little farmer's market. But they had to weigh their produce, write an invoice, make tallies of totals, figure out tax, and make the delivery and kind of chat with people. They also learned social skills. They learned how to communicate in a language not their own, and they learned math. And when I talked to the woman who started it, she just sort of shrugged and said, whatever happens, I don't want these kids to have to work at McDonald's when they graduate from high school, and they don't. So that can happen here too. And some of these kids, when they were older, came back to work as gardeners and teach others. So the project grew in a different way. And I look at this garden, and yes, it's here to help people who are getting back on their feet, but also there's so many volunteers that come and work in this garden. I think it serves also as a kind of community garden where people can come, they can work, they can be with others. And that's a very hard to measure kind of thing, but it's a very good thing, and it's partly what makes this garden so exciting. So I thank you all for what you're doing here in Santa Cruz, and it's a wonderful thing, and I hope you'll continue, even if the need for food and shelter have finally been met. Chris Roberts is a trainee who's going to speak to you about his experience at the Homeless Garden Project.
When I was asked to do this by Derry, she sat me down and talked to me away from everybody else, and she gave me a lot of words of not just encouragement but thankfulness about how hard I've been working here, and I felt like I was put in such a position that when she finally asked me to do this, I was nervous about trying to meet those expectations. But with everything that's happened here with me, I felt that this is the least that we could do. This place has done so much for me as well as other people. I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming out to our farm. And it's funny when I say our farm because I think of all the numerous people that come here. Whether it's to volunteer, donate, find some peace and quiet, or like me and many other trainees, to get our lives back together and give it some purpose. All of us have left our mark here, but more apparent is the mark that's been left on us by this incredible place, as well as a sense of self-worth, dignity, and confidence that have helped me to truly define who I am and what I actually want to be. And how did I get to this point? Let me start by telling you guys a little bit about where I came from and what defines me. As a child, I grew up in a split household, a military family with strict discipline and harsh consequences. As the oldest to three half brothers, and in the other family, I was the youngest and considered the black sheep. I was alone, out of place, incapable of doing anything right no matter where I was. At age 11, I thought I had found the answer to those solutions to those problems in drugs. My self-proclaimed answer has taken me everywhere from rehabs, hospitals, to near deaths and jails, and finally at age 30 in front of a judge with 3 years of prison over my head, asking me, what are you going to do with your life? I've tried recovering numerous times, but without any meaningful purpose to guide my actions, always seem to fall short of success. One of my biggest defining points was on October 29, 2004, 4 months before I turned 21, I became a father. My son Casey has become and still is and will always be the light of my life. My son and I share a very special bond that can only be defined as unconditional love and understanding. He and I have gone through CPS together, the special women in our lives leaving, homelessness, all while trying to manage his symptoms. In 2009, he was diagnosed with autism and severe ADHD. And in 2010, received from CPS his third diagnosis as his third classification as being a runner. These things and more have strengthened our bond to one another. We truly are each other's shadow. Being the father to such a special boy means I have been gifted with patience, understanding, compassion, and unconditional love. And as parents, we're expected to know everything, have all the answers, and be perfect role models to our children. But in reality, that's not the case. We make mistakes and learn along the way just as they do. And after everything I've gone through, and he and I have gone through, my goal, my biggest hope is that I'll have raised him to be a better person than I was and to not follow in all of Dad's footsteps. All these events, learning experiences, and people are important defining moments in my life, but they do not solely define who and what I am. Up until the beginning of this year, I couldn't really see that. I let people in my past define my future. In mid-January of this year, it was suggested by several of my close friends, who are also trainees here, to come check out this place, this homeless garden project, and see what it was all about. And I had no idea what to expect. I was a couple of months clean, just out of jail, and had no real sight to aim for. I knew how to care for my son and run a functioning household, but didn't know how to make me happy. How or what would make me happy. In a very short amount of time, I began to feel good about what I was accomplishing here at the farm, as a spark began to ignite inside of me. What had started as my own little personal therapy sessions grew and blossomed into a bright newfound passion, and I began to feel my purpose. February 1st, 2015 marked a fresh start as my first official day as a trainee. And now it's August. I've been an official trainee for 6.5 months. I've learned everything from irrigation to how to prep a bed, plant it, maintain it, harvest it, and break it down to start it all over. And let's not forget keeping our soil healthy by crop rotation, cover cropping for years to come. And at the end of this month, I will have successfully completed my 2-month post as the main greenhouse person. And due to the amount of commitment that I'm trying to show here, the farm manager has given me a unique opportunity. Instead of doing a normal post that most of us do, I get to take it to the next level and learn the behind the scenes work that comes with managing a farm. All of these skills are just the tip of the mark that this place has left on me. This is my home, my safe place, my tranquil serenity. And because of the positive effects that this place has had on me, I was discharged early from probation. My felony is completely erased. This oasis of hope has given me a purpose and a goal. I now finally know what I want to do with my life. In spring of 2016, I'll be enrolling at Cabrillo College for agriculture to become a farmer. And I've also already been given several job offers when I finish this program. But my ultimate goal is that I can own my own farm one day, so that I can teach children and adults similar to my child that have the same characteristics and pass on the same feelings of accomplishment, confidence, purpose, and belonging that this place has given to me. Without this remarkable place and its bosses, Derry, Chris, Lindsay, and Mike, who 7 years ago started out as a trainee just like I did and became something more. With their understanding, compassion, and guidance, and all others that support this farm, I and many others would be lost, destroyed, incarcerated, or much worse. I hope this place lasts for many, many more years to help show the hundreds or even thousands of homeless people that are sick, tired, hurting, or just plain stuck in a pit of despair, that there is help, hope, and a real light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you guys have a great night.